Okay, right. We're now going to go into the extension activities, and our first one is a big one. It's realistic gravity. Now, these are a lot more complex, so you must have understood and done all the previous videos before you get to this point. The other thing I'd like you to do is, as well as saving your last platform game, which was Endgame, I now want you to, in Scratch, go File, Save As, and save this as Extension Platform or Extension Platform Game, so that you now have two copies, and this is the more advanced one. Okay, in this we're going to look at giving much more realistic gravity. Right, let's look at our Scratch game. Okay, if I run this, and you watch how the unicorn falls down, the first thing is the unicorn is falling down at a very slow rate. It doesn't speed up, but gravity actually does speed up. The longer something falls for, the faster it goes. So after the first second of falling, at that very end of that last second, you're travelling at just under 10 meters a second. But for the next second, you accelerate again by another 10 meters a second on top of the first one, and so on and so forth, as it keeps getting faster and faster and faster. Eventually what will happen is wind resistance will slow you down as much as you're speeding up. So when you say you jump out of an aeroplane with a parachute, the second you jump out you get faster and faster and faster and faster and faster. You then pull the parachute and you slow down and you match a constant speed of falling. You no longer fall any faster. That is called the terminal velocity. It's the velocity travelling down at which you will not go any faster because everything is in balance. And that's effectively what the unicorn does. But that's not very realistic. And you can get away with it, but we'd like to make it seem that you've got a bit of acceleration in there. So I'm going to add a velocity up and down, a y velocity, to our unicorn. Let's stop this and let's move into it. So click on there. I'm going to go quite fast here. Unlike the previous extensions, you will possibly have to stop, pause and go back and look at this quite carefully to follow. Right, so I'm going to add a new variable. It must be for this sprite only, and this time it's yval. Okay, right, and you can see it now. We need to set it up, so set yval to, and at the moment, let's leave it at 1. It's initial. Now, so this is our speed, going up or down. So you can go up as well with this. Currently, our position, our y, is just controlled by this little equation here. Set y, or y will become equal to the current value of y minus gravity. It's going to go down. Right. Well, I want that to actually instead change by its up and down speed. It's in a direction, its y velocity. So I'm going to rip that out, go to my operators, I'm going to add this time rather than minus. Data set y to plus yval. Oops, that hopped out. There we go. So, right. Currently, if we ran that, you'll see the unicorn should fly up into the air. Not particularly good. And the reason for that is our y velocity is positive, therefore it's going up, because we set it to a positive. So if I change it to -1, now our direction is going to go down, because it's a velocity, remember, not just a speed, and we can see it's now doing the same as it was before. What I want to now do is, instead of saying that you're no longer going to travel in any direction, this only ever works if you're not touching green and if you're not at the bottom there. This nested if is, I would like to change this now so that the y velocity is made 0 if you are touching the green. So I'm going to change that. I'm going to say if touching green, set the y velocity to 0. Right? Now I can move this outside of our if. I can run that. Now watch what happens as it touches the green. It stops. But that is still being run. But it's now saying y is going to be equal to y plus 0 because it's touching the green. Now, we've still got this nested if in. If I was to stop this, move these out of the way, and run. Our big problem now is what's going to happen if it gets to here. Is it still going down? So we've lost that ability to stop that as well. Okay. So I want to change it, and instead of having a nested if here, I'm going to pull this one out. Oops. I'm going to pull this bit out, and I'm going to use a OR. A bit more complicated. It's much. If we can pop this in. Okay. Right. What I'm now saying is if the position of our unicorn is more than minus 180, or its hooves are touching the green grass, then stop it to there. Now that won't do much at the moment because it's always, well, we'll run it. Let's have a look. We'll just put it in and you'll see this will go wrong. It just hovers there. Why? Move this out of the way. Well, because I need to reverse that to say if it's less than minus 180 or it's touching the green, then I want it to stop. What I mean by less than is if we're down here, that would be much less than minus 180, 181, minus 182, something like that. Then I want the speed to stop. So I need to take this one out, and I need to now reverse it. So I go if y is less than minus 180, oops, or touching the green. If I restart that, and bear with me while our unicorn falls down, it will now set the y velocity to 0, and we can see here is our sprite 1 y velocity. It's on minus 1, bang, and it goes to 0 and it stops falling. Right? Okay, so that's the first part you need to do. Now you can choose, by the way, when you do these. I wouldn't recommend that you just pause the video and watch me doing it, because as you can see, sometimes I will deliberately show you what happens when it goes wrong, so you have to listen to me while watching it this way. If I press the spacebar now, which I had chosen to make it jump, it just hovers in midair. The reason this is happening is we set the velocity down to 0, but if it's not touching green, or if it's not down at the bottom there, then surely its speed should start to increase again. Surely something should happen to make it get a bit bigger. Now, in the simplest terms, we could then use an else. We could say, okay, if it's doing these and I want it to be 0, otherwise I actually want y velocity to become a negative. So I can do that by using the if else command. Right. This gives me two things to happen instead of one. I can ask one question. That one question is still my same original question. If we're too far down or if we're touching the green, then, and there's my if, then set to 0. But now I've got another option. My other option now is, well, if you're not too far down or you're not touching 0, well, what do? Well, in the simplest form, I could then just set y velocity to minus 1. Pop that in, and now you see, it will do one or the other. Okay, so I'm just going to delete all these. So that is a slightly better way of doing it. Okay, and that's all well and good. I hit jump though, and it comes down. So this has worked to a point, but I said accelerate. Well, if you notice, it's still not accelerating. So I could change this slightly. Rather than just set it to minus 1, I could have something that actually permanently set it to get faster all the time. So what I could do is try this. I could say set yvel to itself Do I use plus or minus? You can use, actually I'm going to use a minus here. To itself minus gravity. Just delete that. Okay. Now, I'm going to run this and place that inside here. Now watch what happens when I run it. Boom! Well, it's certainly accelerated. You notice it accelerated right the way through the platform. Try it again. Slowed down a little but then it kept going. Again. And it just stopped. But, let's put one down here. If I move it too fast, it's going to fall all the way through. Okay. That's quite tricky to explain what's happening, but it's to do with the way that it animates. What is happening is as it begins, it's moving quite slowly. And the way that we animate that is we say, oh, move a little bit, move a little bit, move a little bit, move a little bit, move a little bit. So it's not physically going between these 2 points. It's just jumping from there to there. Because we don't notice that jump, our eyes lie to us and say that's actually what movement is. We think it's gradually drifting between the two, but it's not. The reality is it's just jumping from there to there. It's moving by 1. With 1, that was absolutely fine. It was going nice and slowly, and that was a little gap. But as we start to speed up, we get a problem. And the problem is that instead of doing a little jump, it starts to do bigger jumps and bigger jumps. Now, why is that a problem? Well, think of it this way. We're here. We're now going to do quite a fast speed. So our Y velocity is maybe 20, 30, 50, something like that. So the next time it goes through the loop, it's going to hop down to there. What it's done is it's jumped over the green platform. It's gone too fast for it. And we don't want that. So we're going to have to effectively give our little unicorn a little parachute. We're going to have to set up its terminal velocity at a speed we're happy with, where it won't fall too fast to fall all the way through there. Now that's usually about the size of our green, which I'm going to put it at about 5 and try that. It's trial and error. It all depends on how big you've made this. So where we've got these set Y to Y vel, I'm going to have to this time put a nested if in and say that if, remember Y vel is a negative, the faster it falls down, the lower the number because it's negative, not positive. So if Y vel is more than -5, so -4, -3, -2, whatever. Yep. So what we're saying there is the speed going down is less than -5. Then we want to make it that bit faster. And we can try that now. Let's move these out of the way. And it's limited to a speed and it stops. And that's nice. The other thing I can do is, that's also, I think it's a bit violent, is I can now change my global gravity score. So I go back and we set up gravity to be a 1. If I actually make it something like about 0.1. So 0.1. We try that now. So I've reduced gravity. You see, it's quite a slow start, but then it does get up to that nice speed as it falls. If I jump, you see how it starts to speed up. So we've added realistic gravity where it accelerates, and we've placed in all the controls there. I can now remove that. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to go back through the video and go through each of those steps. Now, you're not going to use the same values as me. This depends how big your platforms are, how fast you want it to look. You may want to choose a different setup for gravity. It's entirely up to you. So I'm expecting you now to go through this video again. You can pause it at the right spots and make sure you type the whole thing in and you understood that. Okay, away you go.